We've got to address Cleveland Browns owner Jimmy Haslam, because reports suggest he's fuming that fans aren't completely locked in on this franchise right now. And let's be honest, the core reason is Shedeur Sanders. The truth? They don't want him. The owner doesn't want him. The coach doesn't want him. The general manager doesn't want him. The league itself doesn't want Shedeur in the NFL. But the only reason he's even there is because he drives revenue and ratings. Without that financial incentive, they'd have shut the door already. They never intended to let him truly play. The NFL thought it could survive a Sunday without Shedeur Sanders. The result? An implosion uglier than a Browns goal line fumble. Viewership didn't just decline, it plummeted into the basement, leaving executives sweating harder than linemen in August training camp. Fans tuned out, broadcasters panicked, and Cleveland suddenly looked like it had unplugged the entire league. This isn't just a ratings dip. This is an NFL-scale catastrophe, all because Shedeur was kept off the field. Cleveland's season has spiraled into pure chaos. What does this mean? Unless disaster strikes both quarterbacks ahead of him, Shedeur sits, waiting like a ghost on the depth chart. Everyone knew it, but now it's out in print, and the rage is boiling over. Browns fans didn't just show up disappointed. They arrived with the fury of betrayal, the kind of heartbreak that feels like watching your long-awaited prize ripped from your hands on a fumbled kickoff. Imagine weeks of hype, overpriced nachos, face paint in brown and orange, only to find Shedeur Sanders marked inactive. Fans aren't stupid. They see the game being played, and many now believe the more attention he draws, the less likely they are to let him touch the field. He's being used for clout, not competition. The stadium looked less like a football cathedral and more like a half-empty scrimmage field. Seats didn't just sit empty, they screamed emptiness, echoing disappointment with every row. Local journalists are whispering about ticket sales dipping, and while loyal Cleveland fans always show up, the cracks are starting to show. Reddit threads, social media rants, and radio call-ins all circle back to the same point. Ratings are collapsing, fans are furious, and the energy is gone without Shedeur. People didn't invest in season tickets to watch mediocrity jog across the turf. They wanted swagger, electricity, the kind of spark that makes you believe something exciting could finally happen in Cleveland. And here's the bitter forecast. Cleveland is destined to burn through every quarterback on the roster before finally tossing Shedeur into the fire. By then, the city will be chanting his name like a war cry from Week 1 through Week 7. And when he steps in, expectations will be impossible. Either make the season exciting or carry the team into the playoffs. Instead of nurturing him, they'll throw him into the worst possible scenario. At that point, the only answer is clear. Trade him. Send him somewhere he can become far more than what Cleveland is trying to reduce him to. Instead of excitement, Browns fans are being served the football equivalent of reheated leftovers. And they want answers. But here's the perspective that stings. Shedeur's situation mirrors Kobe Bryant's early years. Remember Kobe, brimming with raw talent, fire in his eyes, and undeniable confidence, only to be benched and held back by Del Harris. Harris thought he was humbling him, but history humbled Harris instead. Kobe became an icon, one of the greatest to ever breathe life into the game. Harris, a forgotten footnote. And now Kevin Stefanski is writing himself into the same tragic role, trying to suppress Shedeur Sanders under the illusion of control. History has a cruel sense of humor, but Browns fans don't want to wait decades for poetic justice. They're outraged now, and not just mildly irritated. They're angry enough to whisper about petitions, even demanding political intervention to change the coach. It's one thing to lose games. Cleveland has mastered that art. But it's another thing entirely to lose the fans.
I'll be honest, I'm a little deflated, a little restless. There's no Shedeur spark in the air. He's buried as a third-string quarterback. Then Aaron chimes in, "Oh, there's Shedeur buzz." And I'm like, what? He hasn't even touched the field. Didn't play a snap. Yet as always, the Browns fan base is fractured right down the middle. Half believe his moment with kicker Andre Smith telling him it would be okay after the missed field goal was genuine leadership. The other half dismiss it as staged optics, a ploy to get his face on camera. Meanwhile, reality is brutal. Fans are vanishing. Attendance so dreadful you could play musical chairs across entire sections without brushing shoulders. Beer taps collecting dust, jerseys forgotten in closets. Hope bleeding out quicker than a running back, bursting through paper-thin cardboard resistance. And while Cleveland crumbles, Stefanski stands stoic, arms folded, expression blank, as if waiting for an Uber, oblivious to the storm tearing the city apart. And here's the truth. Who cares if Harlem's angry? Be angry enough to act. Don't just mumble into your beer. Be furious enough to fire this man before Sunday even arrives. But instead of bold leadership, Stefanski is pulling a Del Harris, trying to cage a superstar before he's even unleashed. That's not just misguided strategy. In football terms, it's malpractice. Fans don't want sterile safety. They don't want monotony. They don't want a team managed like an accountant balancing spreadsheets. They crave fire. They crave Shedeur, turning busted plays into electrifying highlights. They crave something to believe in. Shedeur just has to keep grinding. Right now, he's QB3, which means scout team duty, splitting reps with Bailey Zappa, sharpening vision, speeding release, refining mechanics, but everyone can see it. If Joe Flacco falters, Dillon Gabriel gets the nod. And if Stefanski still can't recognize the obvious, then maybe it's time to send the loudest message possible by not showing up, not cheering, not spending, because nothing rattles an owner like vacant parking lots and concession stands echoing with silence. It's the same tired script. A coach mistaking discipline for burying talent. An owner mistaking loyalty for clinging to a coach who's clearly out of gas. If that's Stefanski's philosophy, then perhaps Saturday night karma is the answer. Fire him before he even steps into the stadium Sunday. Pull the trigger, Harlem, before the fans pull their loyalty for good. Because here's the harsh truth. Shedeur's absence doesn't just cripple the Browns, it damages the NFL. Ratings collapse. Attendance nosedives. The league looks fragile without its next face of the franchise. The NBA already learned this lesson with Kobe. Imagine if Del Harris had smothered Kobe's career under 2 years of bench time. Basketball history would have been rewritten. That's the scale of what's happening in Cleveland. Stefanski thinks he's managing a roster. What he's actually doing is suppressing the player who could redefine not just the Browns, but perhaps the league itself. And that's the kind of blunder no coach ever recovers from. Just ask Del Harris, if anyone even remembers him. Then there's the ownership mess. Remember draft night? Shedeur slid to the 5th round. It was monumental. And when asked, the owner shrugged. That was Andrew Berry's call. Tossing his GM under the bus. Wrong on 2 levels. Wrong to deflect blame. And worse, to do it publicly, when everyone knows the truth. It was transparent nonsense. And fans saw right through it. And that's why Cleveland is boiling. They see the empty seats, the vanishing energy, the wasted future. They feel it in their bones. History is repeating itself. If Kobe could break free from Harris's stubborn grip and ascend as the Black Mamba, why can't Shedeur do the same against Stefanski's suffocating hand? Fans know the script. They've seen it before. That's why they're enraged. That's why stadiums are barren. That's why Saturday night might be Stefanski's last act. Fire him. Free Shedeur. Let Cleveland breathe again. Those empty seats aren't just unoccupied. They're screaming silence. Every row echoing disappointment. Ticket sales flatlining. Stadium atmosphere colder than a library on a Tuesday afternoon. And here's the punchline. Browns fans aren't even subtle anymore. They're enraged. They're tweeting, posting, calling into radio shows with the kind of ferocity usually reserved for political uprisings. Nobody bought season tickets to watch mediocrity stumble around the field. The flood of outlandish takes on Shedeur Sanders. Why he hasn't dominated preseason, why he's not the starter in Cleveland, is off the charts. Fans have lost their grip, and I think I know why. They're still bitter they misjudged him on draft night, convinced he wasn't worthy of a first-round slot, but football isn't about grudges. The NFL is a meritocracy. It's about what you actually produce between the lines. And fans wanted Shedeur. The swagger, the energy, that spark of possibility that maybe, just maybe, Cleveland could be electric for once. Instead, they've been served the football version of reheated leftovers. And now, the fan base is demanding answers. The parallels are undeniable. Shedeur's situation mirrors Kobe Bryant's rookie years. Raw talent, burning fire, that unshakable confidence of knowing he was the future. And what did his coach do? Shackled him, benched him, treated him like a sophomore sneaking into varsity practice. But Kobe shattered those chains. He became a legend, an icon who redefined greatness. And Stefanski? He's on the path to being remembered not as some brilliant strategist, but as the barrier Shedeur obliterated on his way to glory. The problem: Browns fans don't want to wait for history to vindicate them. They're furious now, not just barbershop angry. We're talking furious enough to circulate petitions demanding the governor step in and force a coaching change. Losing games is one thing. Cleveland's been cursed with that for decades. Losing the fan base? That's terminal. And then there's Shedeur himself. Asked why he wasn't getting reps, he answered with quiet humility, "That's not my place. It's out of my control. I'm grateful just to be here." That's poise. That's perspective. But beneath the composure, fans see what's happening. Stadiums hollowing out. Attendance cratering so badly you could play musical chairs across entire sections without colliding with anyone. Beer taps frozen. Jerseys collecting dust. Hope draining away faster than a running back slicing through a tissue paper defense. Because Stefanski isn't just a slow-moving coach. He's holding an entire city hostage. Instead of seizing the moment, he's pulling a Del Harris, trying to cage a superstar before the world ever sees him roar. Imagine if Harris had succeeded in smothering Kobe's rise. Basketball history would have been unrecognizable. That's the magnitude of Cleveland's crisis. Stefanski thinks he's merely balancing a depth chart. What he's really doing is shackling the one player who could transform not just the franchise, but the NFL itself. And that's the kind of blunder you never recover from. Just ask Del Harris. If you can even find someone who remembers him. Even in the preseason, the sabotage feels deliberate. Against the Rams, Shedeur struggled, sure, but he was running with third stringers. That's part of a young quarterback's growth. But when the 2-minute drill arrived, a golden chance to seize momentum, Stefanski sent in a quarterback who won't even be on the roster next week. Fans saw it. They know the game being played. And that's why they're livid, because they recognize the truth. The future is being squandered before their eyes. They've endured endless losing seasons. but now they're watching hope itself rot in real time. If Kobe could rise from Harris's chokehold to become the Mamba, then why can't Shedeur break free of Stefanski's grip? History is repeating itself. Fans know it. That's why stadiums are empty. That's why the atmosphere is dead. And that's why Saturday might be Stefanski's last chance to taste karma firsthand. Fire him. Free Shedeur. Let Cleveland finally exhale. And now, the theories are getting darker. Fans whispering Stefanski has struck secret pacts with rival teams to keep Cleveland mediocre forever. Because how else could you explain burying your only chance at greatness? Crazy? Maybe. But that's what happens when you starve a fan base of hope for decades. They start drawing conspiracies out of thin air just to make sense of the chaos. Have you looked at the stadium vendors lately? They're practically pleading for someone to buy something. One hot dog guy admitted he sold fewer francs last game than a high school track meet. That's how barren the atmosphere has become. And it all circles back to this. Why draft him? Why bring Shedeur Sanders into Cleveland if you never intended to give him a real chance? They wanted Kenny Pickett battling 40-year-old Joe Flacco. That's the grand plan at quarterback? They spent a third-round pick on Dillon Gabriel, then tossed the most electric player in the draft into the 5th round, slapped a value pick label on it, and called it a day. Value? Where? You don't let him start. You don't even let him play. You know it's dire when even the overpriced popcorn goes stale before halftime. That's Stefanski's legacy. A stadium so lifeless the nacho cheese won't even melt. Meanwhile, Shedeur's jerseys are flying off shelves online. Fans are speaking with their wallets, and the message is deafening. Cleveland football without Shedeur isn't something they want to buy into. They want him on the field, under the lights, silencing every doubter. If Stefanski can't deliver that, why keep Stefanski? And if ownership can't recognize that reality, then maybe ownership deserves the karma too. And karma has a funny way of showing up. Maybe it's empty luxury suites haunting the owners on game day. Maybe it's corporate sponsors quietly reconsidering deals. Or maybe it's a fan revolt so loud that the dog pound transforms into the roar of an uprising. Karma doesn't need permission. It just needs a spark, and Cleveland fans are more than ready to strike the match. Think about it. Firing Stefanski. Saturday night wouldn't just be a football move, it would be a cleansing ritual. A declaration that this city is finished settling for mediocrity. A statement to the league that Cleveland will no longer waste away in irrelevance. And here's where I say it plainly. Shedeur Sanders is being set up to fail. National television. Right here I'll say it. 11 practices in camp. 11. He's been buried with the 3rd string, tossed scraps with the 4th unit. Not one meaningful rep with the starters. And now, suddenly, you're talking about throwing him into a starting lineup cold. That's not preparation. That's sabotage. If Cleveland had any sense, they'd send the signal now. A signal that they're embracing the future instead of chaining it to a bench. Fire Stefanski before Sunday so fans don't have to endure one more week of joyless, lifeless football. Imagine the electricity inside that stadium if people walked in knowing the dead weight was gone and the franchise's future was finally free. That's the jolt this fan base is starving for. And the Kobe comparisons, they'll only grow louder. Just as Del Harris tried to smother Kobe's fire, Stefanski is shackling Shedeur. But here's the difference. The NBA gave Kobe time to break free and transform into the Mamba. The NFL doesn't grant that luxury. It moves fast. Stars rise and vanish in a heartbeat. Cleveland cannot afford to waste Shedeur's spark, not in a league built on momentum, headlines, and hype. Suffocate him now, and you don't just lose games. You lose your future. The man can flat out play. He's not some backyard Instagram quarterback tossing lobs on a high school field with his cousin filming on an iPhone. Shedeur has the numbers, the accuracy, and the ice in his veins composure that would make even veteran signal callers sweat. But for a certain circle of NFL players, none of that matters. To them, Shedeur is just Dion's son, the kid with the diamond watch collection, the rookie with more NIL deals than some practice squads combined, the so-called clout chaser who hasn't taken an NFL snap, but already moves like a corporate ambassador. They believe his attention isn't organic, that it's manufactured hype. Worse, they think he's violating the sacred rookie code. Keep your head down, be quiet, stay invisible until further notice. Don't smile, don't celebrate, don't make noise until the vets say you can. But Shedeur broke that unwritten law the second he strolled in with designer shades and highlight reels polished like TikTok edits. And here's the kicker. If he didn't have the skill to back it up, this story would have died already. He'd be another college flash in the pan, his name reduced to trivia night fodder. But the truth, the problem, is that Shedeur might actually live up to every ounce of the hype. And nothing infuriates people more than when the guy you dismissed proves you wrong. Let's peel it back. NFL veterans don't just see Shedeur. They see Prime's shadow stretching across the league. They see a kid raised with cameras in his face, who never had to grind in anonymity the way they did. And yeah, some of that resentment is understandable. Most players didn't grow up hopping private jets to games or landing endorsement checks before they could legally drive. Meanwhile, Cam Ward steps into the conversation. And his perspective matters. Here's a guy who battled through 3 different programs, 3 different offensive coordinators, 3 different receiver corps, and dominated each stop. He knows the grind. He knows what it's like to scrap for recognition without the silver spoon. So when Ward calls out the bitterness toward Shedeur, it hits harder. It's not just jealous fans, it's salty veterans too. And their issue isn't Shedeur's ability. It's that he's daring to rewrite the rookie playbook. This is where the double standard screams loudest. Other quarterbacks enter with swagger, and it's marketed as confidence, charisma, leadership. But Shedeur? He's branded arrogant, cocky, and only relevant because of his last name. Funny how that works. Here's the reality. Shedeur is shaking the system. He's blurring the line between baller and brand, between game and image. He's forcing the NFL to reckon with a new breed of athlete who refuses to separate excellence on the field from excellence off it. That makes traditionalists uncomfortable, and it makes veterans defensive. Now let's be clear, not having him run that 2-minute drill, strange. Do I believe he's being outright sabotaged? No. Do I believe he's being put in the best position to succeed? Absolutely not. But let's be honest, he plays for the Browns. Nobody in that organization is positioned for success. They're trotting out Joe Flacco as a starter in 2025. Need I say more? And that's the irony. The league should be embracing Shedeur. Love him or hate him, he sells tickets. He moves merchandise. He keeps the NFL buzzing. And isn't that the entire point of the entertainment business disguised as sport? Ward's honesty pulls the curtain back. It shows that the resistance isn't about performance. It's about ego. It's about veterans clinging to outdated hierarchies. And maybe, just maybe, his bluntness sparks a bigger reckoning. Maybe it forces players to ask themselves why a young quarterback with confidence rattles them so much. Maybe it makes the league reconsider how it treats rookies with swagger. Thank you guys. See you in the next video.